Welcome everyone across the world to today's presentation on 5 tips for great proposals, one of the many useful trainings offered by funds4ngos.org to help you succeed in fundraising. As you know, funds4ngos.org is one of the best sources of NGO funding information on the web. Please be sure to sign up and subscribe to Funds4NGO's email funding alerts. I'm Megan Arakelian from Philanthropia in New York, and allow me to introduce our trainer, Eric Dediger.
Well, thanks, Megan, and welcome everyone. And we both, Megan and I, work for Philanthropia, and that's a consulting firm based in New York that works with NGOs around the world to help them successfully fundraise. And over the years, I've developed hundreds of proposals, and over time, I've gotten much better at it, and through trial and error. And many have been successful. So today I'm going to share some of my experience, and I will share 5 tips on creating great proposals with you all.
To see a schedule of upcoming webinars, please visit webinars.funds4ngos.org for more information. And here's our first tip, understand the problem. It's very interesting. Eric, can you explain?
Yeah, this is very important because I think to develop a good proposal, we have to really understand the problem. And there's 2 reasons for this. The first reason is because it helps us define the activities, the strategy required that we need to solve the problem. But more importantly, in some ways, we can make sure, if we understand the problem, that it is a problem the donor wants to solve. So, for example, in this picture, you see 4 girls, and they're working, they're carrying wood. And so the problem is maybe child labor. Girls are working, and the effect is that they're not going to school and they might be exploited. But what is the underlying cause of a problem like this? Well, it could be gender discrimination. As you can see, these are all girls. Maybe the boys are in school. So to deal with this problem, you would focus your program and thus your proposal on maybe gender discrimination or girls' education, things like that. So, and we want to make absolutely sure that the donor is interested in that problem. If a donor has a grant available for environment or global warming, then we don't want to show up with a proposal that deals with child labor or gender issues in most cases. We want to make sure it's a good fit. They have money to spend to solve a problem. We want to make sure we are solving that problem for them.
So tip number 2, define specific activities.
Yeah, that's also very important. And here's an example. For example, parents no longer use girls for child labor. And the activity in our proposal could read, organize training for 5 to 10 local people. Well, this is not what you want to do. You want to make the activity as specific as possible. For example, in the next slide, a better activity and a more specific one would be organize a 1-week training to train 10 local advocates in advocacy techniques. Because if the activity is very specific, it will be very easy to budget out. I can budget out a 1-week training for 10 people in a local community center or what have you quite easily. But I can't budget out a training for a range of people that doesn't define the number of days. The more specific, the easier it is to budget out. The second thing is for the reader of the proposal, the potential donor, they can imagine what it is you're trying to do. In this activity, they have a pretty good understanding what it is you're going to do in real life. In the activity we showed you before, it will be very difficult for that donor to imagine it. And you do want to make sure that they can imagine what it is you're trying to do.
So, Eric, we see tip number 3, keep it short and simple.
A very important tip. And here it says keep it simple, stupid. Well, I don't want to use that awful word. But it's called KISS, and you might have seen this before. And there's a couple of issues. A is try and use simple language. Sometimes people tend to write proposals and they want to use very difficult language or very technical terms. And for most proposal readers, the donors, that's not really necessary. A proposal is meant to explain what it is you're trying to do. You don't have to use very complicated language to do that, and you should avoid it if you can. And then the acronym soup. You see a soup with all these acronyms or letters in it, and try and limit your acronyms. I've seen proposals with hundreds of acronyms in them, and it gets very tedious for a reader. Also, keep it short and with few annexes. Who wants it? Let's imagine you're at the Bill Gates Foundation or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and you get 3,000 proposals, and they're all 60 pages long. Who would want to read that? If you can keep it short, then you will do the reader a favor. And very important, follow donor direction. And here we have an example of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where they tell you, please click here for the rules and the guidelines and exactly what you're supposed to be submitting. Read it very carefully, because if a donor gets a lot of applications, then if your application doesn't follow the rules specifically, they'll chuck it out. Even if it's the best proposal of the bunch. And it's happened to me early in my career once or twice, and I don't make that mistake again, and so shouldn't you. It goes into the trash can if you don't follow the regulations.
So tip number 4, build a good budget.
Also very important. The budget sometimes is an afterthought, or people preparing proposals, they will look at how much money is available. Maybe the grant is up to $100,000, and they'll just create a $100,000 budget. That's not correct. You want to make sure you budget out your activities very carefully so that it reflects what it is you want to do. Follow donor requirements, like I just mentioned, and be cost effective. But don't be cheap. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to make sure the money is well spent to have the maximum impact, but not for you to develop a cheap program. And that's an issue I often see with NGOs. They think they have to do it as cheap as possible because the donors will like that. No, the donors have money to spend to solve a problem. Some of these problems cannot be solved on the cheap. It has to be done with quality programming, and quality programming requires proper funding. If you need a computer to do your program, include that computer in your budget. If you need staff training, capacity building, security, safety issues covered, include it in your budget. Don't be cheap, but be cost effective. You can be frugal at the same time. Now use the proper currency, such as US dollars or your local currency, and make sure that the donor understands, because not everybody might know the currency in which you work. And also with exchange rate fluctuations, it's good to put the US dollar or euro or pound, whatever the case may be, next to the local currency used. And then also mention other funding. If you have, if 30% of your proposal is already funded by other donors or by yourself through in-kind contributions or other means, then mention that. That means there's already some money available to start the program. So that's about budgeting.
So our last tip, tip number 5, let others read it.
Extremely important and so easy to do. And very often what happens to me is that I find a proposal that I've prepared maybe a year ago, and I'm using it and redeveloping it, and I still find mistakes. And I can tell you, if your proposal, if somebody else reads it and reviews it, they will pick up mistakes. They will look at, find some syntax mistakes, and they will also might also have some questions or need some clarifications. And it can be a colleague, it can be your spouse, it can be a friend, it can be anybody. But anybody reading the proposal should be able to understand what it is about. And having somebody else read it will make you pick up on a lot of things you can improve on the proposal, and it's very easy to do. So that's my last tip for you today.
So thank you everyone for viewing this presentation. If you'd like to find out more information on the organizers, please visit www.fundsforngos.org and be sure to subscribe to email funding alerts, which announce fundraising opportunities. And for more information on fundraising webinars, please visit webinars.fundsforngos.org. Thank you everyone for your participation today, and best of luck writing proposals.